there are things that have been slotted in pre-seed,
right,
and pre-Series A, or seed extension. So these three terms have come up. How do you did anybody ever give you a definition of these? I'm wondering. Can you define what they are?
No. And they
Okay.
and they're
So
showing
that's
up
the
in all the
honest answer.
books too,
Yeah.
right? Like, and nobody knows. And it kind of is,
Right.
the answer seems to be like, we made that up because there was a lot of money around.
Well, here's the thing. The reason I asked you for the definitions is because I don't know them.
Oh, man.
I've been doing this for 11 years.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by Lemon.io. Need to speed up your product development without draining your budget? Hire vetted engineers from Europe at Lemon.io. Go to lemon.io/twist to get 15% off for the first 4 weeks. BetterHelp, providing access to easy, affordable, and private professional counseling anytime, anywhere. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/twist. And Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub. For the challenges you face as a startup founder, Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub is here to help. The platform provides founders with free resources like Azure credits, development tools like GitHub, mentorship resources, productivity software, training, and so much more. The program is open to all and takes 5 minutes to apply, with no funding required. Learn more and sign up at aka.ms/thisweekinstartups.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sunday. It's VC Sunday School, followed by This Week in Climate. I'm here with Molly Wood, who is in month 6 of being a venture capitalist, halfway to year 1. And every Sunday, if you go through the archive, we do a little VC Sunday School where Molly tells me about what she is working on and maybe some questions or advice she might have or dialogue she wants to have around the job of being a capital allocator. What have you got for me this week and the rest of the audience?
I know. I love this time of the week. And also, I got to say, I had a funny conversation yesterday, a second time. Now I've been here long enough that, founders are starting to boomerang. We're having follow-up calls, like based on to find out where they are with the business now. And it was a very funny conversation because I had talked to this guy in February. So like 5 minutes after I started. And then yesterday we had a whole other, catch up. And he was like, boy, I got to say, like, side note, you're like a totally different person. And I was like, really? Is it the power Bob? And he's like, no.
You know what you're doing.
I know what I'm doing now. I'm getting my mini MBA every day here.
Exactly. I mean, there is something to that. This is why I prefer not to say no to founders. I say not yet. Now, it's because a lot of times, they might be working on an idea, like let's say direct to consumer that, it's not for me, but I say, hey, let's talk in 6 months. Maybe you figure something out, maybe a pivot, who knows? But we'd love to catch up within 6-12 months. And sometimes I'll even give them a benchmark. Hey, when you get 10 customers, that'd be a good time. You have one customer now and it's your previous employer. Hey, when you get 10 customers and more than half of them are not people that'd be a good time for us to catch up. So let me know. And then I'll put a little reminder for myself in my calendar or somewhere,
It really works. It's fascinating. People are doing the homework.
Highly recommend the not yet.
Agree. And not yet with a milestone or with a goal.
Because an agreed upon milestone that would give you something to talk about, because nothing is more frustrating than taking that call again. And it's like nothing's changed. And now you're on the call as a VC. Listen, I'm talking from the VC perspective here. You get on the call and nothing's changed. And you're like, okay, it is 6 months later. You do realize that nothing's changed in the business. So although we're getting to know each other better, what you've actually proven to the VC, now back to the founder side, the VC feels like their time's wasted and they feel like, okay, this founder can't get anything done in 6 months. On your side, don't take a follow-up meeting unless you got major progress, or else you will have proven to the VC, I can't GSD. I can't get stuff done.
I didn't take the note. Way to keep it clean on a Sunday there, J. Cal.
I'm trying on a Sunday. Praise the Lord. Praise Jesus. We're going to get stuff done here.
It's already the most blasphemous segment ever. We're just going to lean in. Yeah. Okay, so a couple things have been coming up over and over. Obviously, a lot of those things are related to valuation and what you like to call clearing market in these conditions. And one of them that we've been talking about a lot lately is, of course, valuation and the idea of reconsidering valuation. And we've talked a lot about how valuation is set by the market, but also that it can be estimated as a function of multiples. And you had a really good explanation for this internally that I think our audience will really benefit from. And I would too. Not that I wasn't listening because I was, but I want to hear it again.
Oh, but no, I'm going to go through it one more time. So we have a Tuesday investor call. Most firms do it on Monday. We do it on Tuesday. I like everybody to be a little more prepared. So give them that extra Monday, and Monday morning, Tuesday morning to get their ducks in a row. Monday morning is a little intense. Firms that do that, sometimes people are up on Sunday night having to do work instead of watching HBO shows. So I try to take it easy on my millennial staff because I know the Gen Z staff, I know they're living their best lives on the weekend. So if you are meeting with a company and they have 3 term sheets, well, the valuation for the company has been set. It's somewhere between the high and the low number of those, top and bottom term sheets in all likelihood. And in some cases, maybe they go get a 4th to beat those 3. So you kind of have a range, don't you? And you as the, latest investor don't have too much work to do other than make the decision, do you want to be in this company? And then the valuation is going to probably be plus or minus 10% of that collection of numbers. The market has established the price. And again, these are private market companies, not public market companies. Public market companies have shares that trade, typically 5 days a week. So, every minute, the value of the company is being evaluated for better or worse. It can be hyped, it could be undervalued, it could be anywhere in between. But you do have, a freely trading marketing shares as opposed to private companies, where you actually have to negotiate the sale of shares. So, if you were looking at a multiple, there are a couple of conditions and boundaries we need to talk about. So, one of the boundaries in the early stages, they're going to dilute 20%, and they're going to need a certain amount of money to achieve a certain number of goals to reach the next milestone in our industry. So let's talk about a company that's a SaaS company with $100,000 a year in revenue. And they've already gone through an accelerator. So they raised money like 150K at about a $2 million valuation. And then they did, let's say, they raised $600,000 at a $6 million valuation. They did a small round just to add a developer and a sales executive and a product manager for a year or so. Mm-hmm. So they diluted 10% there. So now they diluted the company 6 or 7% in the 7% in the accelerator stage, 10% in the seed stage. And now they want to do a pre-series A, as they're calling it these days. So, or some people might call it a seed extension or a seed plus. And they value the company at 10 million, 100 times their annual revenue. So how do you get to that annual revenue? Well, if you took last month and you times it by 12, right, you would be taking what's called the run rate. This month times 12 months. So you're taking the latest month and times it by 12. Some people might calculate the run rate, take the average of the last 3 months. So if that was, let's say, 40, 60, and 80K, that'd be 180K. You take the average of 180 at 60, and then you times that by 12 and you get to whatever, 700 or so. So there's different ways to calculate that. Some people, like in public markets, sometimes will look at the forward-looking revenue. So they'll say, okay, they're growing 20%. They're at 50% this month. They'll be at 60 next month. They'll be at 72 the month after that. Whatever it is, they start working through that scenario. They build a spreadsheet and they give them credit for 20% growth month over month into the next year, calculate the next year's revenue and the valuation based on that. So you divide the valuation by that amount of revenue. Is it the previous 12 months? Well, that's intellectually pretty easy to do. 12 real numbers. So, you're doing this deal in January. You just take last year's January through December. And take that and divide it into 10 million. So if it was 100K previous revenue, you divide it in there, it's 100X. Now, if you do forward and the company anticipates it's going to go 5X in revenue, in 20, going forward 12 months, well, you divide that 500K into 10 million, it's 20 times. Pause on that for a second. If the last 12 months were 100K in revenue, it would be a 100K multiple. And if in our meeting, somebody said it's a 37 multiple or something. And I said, trailing 12 months revenue, forward or current month times 12 run rate. How did you calculate it? And so I think that calculated on run rate, which is a pretty intellectually honest one to do. Another bound condition, if this month they signed somebody and got them to sign a 3-year deal and took the 3 years and booked it on an accounting basis all in this month, even though they're going to deliver the service over 36 months, that would be intellectually dishonest. So you have to also dig into that, right?
There is this new, not to derail us, but there is this new contractual ARR. New-ish, right? Or that's a big conversation, it seems like, in SaaS in terms of calculating ARR, because a lot of it is contractual, hasn't yet been realized. Looks good, but doesn't look good.
Some people can play games with that. So if I got you to sign a 3-year contract, but you're paying monthly, oh, we don't need to give you credit for the 3 years. You know, they can cancel. What's the cancellation term in there? Oh, the cancellation term is 30 days. Okay, great. Like I won't sign any SaaS deals. I have like a couple of companies that are like jumping over my executives' heads and coming to me saying like, hey, I really want to close this deal with your team. They won't sign the deal. I'm like, yes, because I told them we only do monthly. And they're like, well, we only do yearly. I'm like, okay. And they're like, oh, okay, you'll do yearly. I'm like, no, okay, we only do monthly. We win. You're selling the product. I'm buying it. Like I get to decide, not you.
Yeah.
You know, and if the situation was reversed, like
monthly versus yearly is like, it's a bit of a battle.
I understand. Some people,
sometimes, yeah.
You know, if you have like the greatest software, this is like software for monitoring conversations by sales executives. And there's like 20 versions of it. So I told my team, like, listen, there's 20 versions of it. The top 5 are all the same. Pick the one that we'll do monthly and let's test it. And we'll just month by month determine if we want to make a year commitment. But I'm not making a year. They wanted a 2-year commitment. I was like, I'm not making a 2-year commitment. What are you kidding me? Like that shows that you're not committed. Or you're not confident in your software. And then they use this BS excuse like, well, we want you to show a commitment. And I'm like, my commitment is using your product and giving you my credit card and I'm paying you every month. Like I'm not being asked to buy like 36 months worth of cheeseburgers. You know? Like if your cheeseburger's good, I come back. If the cheeseburger's not good, I'm not coming back. You know, I want to keep you on your toes. And if a better solution comes out for less money, I want to go to that.
This is, by the way, we should clarify that we're talking about being a customer as opposed to an investor in this case.
Yes, this
and
is a customer.
Also,
sorry, I went on
that JCal has had too many salads for too many days because it's like the 3rd day in a row that cheeseburgers have come up. So I'm going to say Sunday is when you treat yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I had a cheeseburger the other night. It's quite nice.
It's like The Rock says, you got to treat yourself. Don't cheat yourself.
Oh yeah, there you go. So anyway, that's how you look at the multiples. And so the question then becomes, if there's no market, which is what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see, you've actually had this happen 2 or 3 times now. And I told you this would happen, you know, and when you were meeting with companies,
are new. Yeah.
And I was like, be patient. You know, a good founder, like that good SaaS sales executive who keeps emailing me and they're sending me videos, like explaining the position. I have to show you these like Loom videos. They're nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, they're incredible.
I mean, that is hustle.
They're personalized to me and explaining why, you know, like this is a partnership. I feel like I was like being indoctrinated into a cult or something. Anyway, I was like, the person really wants to sell.
I know. I'm like, I'm a little like halvesies on that.
It's pretty great. Anyway, so what will happen in a market is founders will tell you like, hey, the deal's closing. And 9 out of 10 times the deal is not actually closing. You'll know if the deal is closing because there'll be another term sheet. They will have sent it to you so that you can review it and request an allocation. If they have not sent you a term sheet, there is no other deal. It is not imminent. Mm-hmm. It's imminent, in my definition, when there's a term sheet and the person has signed it or they're about to sign it. And then you will either not be the lead, could be asked to be the co-lead, or could ask to maybe put in a smaller amount than the leads. So long story short, now we're going to get to the point where we have to, in some cases, since we are the only funding source, come up with a valuation ourselves. And that's a whole different thing we have to unpack.
Yeah.
When you're scaling your startup quickly, hiring engineers can slow you down like nothing else. Well, here's some good news. Lemon.io will find you a perfect candidate in 48 hours. What's Lemon.io, you ask? Well, they're a marketplace of engineers from Europe, and they'll match you with a candidate within 48 hours. And if it doesn't work out, they will replace the developer right away. There's nothing to lose. There's no downside here. They test and interview every developer to eliminate the risk of a failed project. And guess what? When you hire in a European time zone, you're going to have developers working basically 24/7. You're going to go faster than your competitors, and you're probably going to beat them. Launch portfolio founder Drew Fabricant said Lemon.io was a game changer for his startup, Scout. Well, Drew was under the gun to hire a developer with a very specific skill set, and Lemon.io delivered a great candidate, and they were a pleasure to work with. Not only did Drew find exactly what he was looking for, but Lemon.io also delivered them a second engineer just as fast. So if you could use a full-time or part-time developer to run your projects faster, go to lemon.io/twist. That's lemon.io/twist, and you'll receive a 15% discount for the first 4 weeks of work with a developer. What a nice offer. Thanks, lemon.io.
The other question I have about valuation is that increasingly, I'm meeting with a lot of companies that don't have a lead. That is 100% becoming more and more and more common. So I think us having those valuation conversations is just going to keep being more common. But for the ones who do have a lead, why are they so secretive about their valuation? Even if they don't have a lead and have sort of a target valuation in mind, I have literally encountered like one company that closed a round and would not talk about their valuation, and another that
but they wanted to raise. Hold on, let's just go one by one. That company, did they want to raise more money?
They apparently not,
like,
because I was like, "Are you interested in raising more money?" That would be a conversation I'd be open to having, but I'd like to know about your valuation. And they were like, "We prefer not to share that." So I'm assuming that was a no on wanting to raise more money.
That would be a no on raising more money. Yes,
right.
If you're going to raise more money, we're going to in diligence see all the documents anyway, and we're going to know it. So, if we're sincerely having a discussion about investing, so that sounds to me like maybe they wanted to be on the podcast, maybe, or they wanted to meet you. But you'll get some of that sometimes. People will want to just meet you, and they are using the investment decision as a way to meet you to maybe get on the podcast. That happens to me sometimes, or vice versa.
That's a good thing to be aware of. That's a good note. But then, the other was, a company that's sort of super interesting, pre-revenue, trying to determine things like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a valuation in mind? Like multiple times I asked this question, and it's like, we cannot, and it was like, it was a trade secret.
So this is for their target valuation. Do they have a valuation in mind for this round? So some people have been trained or have the philosophy, I'm not going to negotiate against myself. I'm going to let the market decide.
Yeah.
And so then you're, again, patience. That's great. Let us know when you find a lead, and we will be part of that group of people who will consider investing once you've set the terms. Right. We're not in a situation where we want to lead the round, but we might want to place a bet, a smaller bet, and we hope you find a great lead who can join your board and help you build the company. And we might be part of the supporting cast and, be helping you fill out the round is the term we use in the industry. And you need people to fill out the round. So now we are part of that latter group. So then when they go to the next person, they're going to use us and say, yeah, we got like 12 people, $250K each. We've got, about $3 million, and we're looking for a lead to take the other $3 million. Now, what do we know now from being part of that collection? We're not soft circled. We're not committed. We are interested in reviewing based on the terms. And if the terms come back and they're gnarly, we're not doing it. So this is where no lead, but X amount circled. Really, I would just exit it to zero. I would just assume they have nothing. That's how I would look at it as a founder too when I'm raising money. Unless I've got a signed contract, unless I've got the money in the bank or it's being wired, nothing actually matters. That's why we did an exercise of tell us what is soft circled, signed, and wired money is in your bank account. So we actually came up with a way to let founders be honest. Be most honest, because a lot of times founders are scared, like, oh my God, I have to, dress this thing up. I gotta convince them. And actually we don't need to be convinced. We just want reality. At least I was speaking for our firm. We just want to know the reality. We might lead. We might give you an offer. But if we can't get, ground truth, as we like to call it in the business, we need ground truth. We need to know. And man, sometimes we'll be like, I have $1 million, but I'll be totally honest with you. It's all soft circle. And I'm like, great. Of that $1 million, how much do you think realistically would come in? Not optimistically, but like just conservatively, realistically. Even when you tell them conservatively, optimistically, founders are an optimistic group. They wouldn't be starting a company if they weren't. So they'll say 600. And then I just in my mind cut that number by half at least.
Yeah.
So I would cut it to 300, 250, something like that. 25% of the overall number, half of their estimate. And, there you are. In terms of, creating a valuation, there is a new thing that's happening that I wanted to bring up with you that you might be seeing, which is, how do you name these things? We know what an accelerator is. That's for a company that, either has very modest traction or, in some cases, there are some accelerators or incubators that, will just accept somebody on an idea. Very few these days, but they'll look for a prototype, maybe 1 or 2 customers, maybe some data, but, very little. And then what a seed round is. Okay, that's a round that's going to be around $10 million, 6 to 15 in the last couple of years. And that seed round tends to be $1 million to $5 million actually. And that used to be the dollar amount actually of Series A's, was 3 to 5 back in the day. Then you have a Series A that tends to be 5 to 10 million, tends to be for 20% of the company. But there are things that have been slotted in pre-seed,
right,
and pre-Series A, or a seed extension. So these three terms have come up. How do you did anybody ever give you a definition of these? I'm wondering, can you define what they are?
No. And and they're
So
showing
that's
up in all the books too, right? Like, and nobody knows. And it kind of is,
right.
The answer seems to be like, we made that up because there was a lot of money around.
Well, here's the thing. The reason I asked you for the definitions is because I don't know them.
Oh, man.
I've been doing this for 11 years. People started coming to me with a pre-seed, and I was like, what's a pre-seed? And I think based on my definition, a pre-seed is a company that doesn't want to go to an accelerator and doesn't want to ask their friends and family for money, but they want to get money from seed funds. Right. But they want to have accomplished nothing. In other words, they want you to do what friends and family do, but they want to do it at a seed valuation. So they want credit for work they have yet to do. And when you meet somebody like that and they're like, here's my idea, here's my deck, and you're like, show me the product, it's not built. Okay, so product's not built. Why don't you go to Accelerator? I don't want to go to Accelerator. Why don't you want to go to Accelerator? Well, because I just want the money. I want to skip that step.
Right.
So, okay.
Well, and I'm encountering a new archetype, the kind of like the pissed off founder, like the one who's like, if I know what I want to build, and if you would give me the money, I would build it.
Yeah, that is a delusional.
Which is also
founder,
what I call my son. Right?
Well,
like, I'm like, are you 15? I mean, bless. I understand that they feel like they're in a Mobius strip, right? Like, I could do this, but I don't have the money, and you won't give me the money until I do it. And I'm like, yeah, I need you to do it.
A super naive like approach, which is like, I would like to be different than everybody else. And what it assumes is like, we can read their destiny.
Yeah.
If you were Luke Skywalker or Obi-Wan Kenobi or Qui-Gon Jinn or whatever Jedi, we would sense the midichlorian and know that you'll be a great Jedi and just give you the lightsaber and you don't have to train. It's like, you don't get the lightsaber day one.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to pick up some rocks. You got to try to levitate some stuff. You have to feel the force. Like, it's going to be a process here. That's why accelerators exist. That's why going to your friends and family and asking them for the first 50 or 100K. So like you really have skin in the game. Or maybe you work half-time and you work on this with sweat equity. But in a hot market, sweat equity, friends and family goes away. Now that we're going into a recession, you're going to see a level of resolute, dogged founders who either work as a consultant 3 days a week, 30, 40 hours a week, and then work on their startup 50, 60 hours a week. And they're putting 100 hours in. And that will be the one you're like, wow, they're still doing 3 days a week consulting for Facebook, doing 30 hours of coding for them. And then they're doing their startup the other 4 days a week.
Right.
For me, when I meet them, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's stop the consulting. I'll give you the money to get you those other 3 days a week back, take 1 or 2 of them off. And then let's get you on your startup, 60 hours a week instead of whatever. And so that's what pre-seed is. And it's basically a way to say, I don't want to do any work. I want to get money. I don't want to do friends and family. I don't want to do the accelerator or anybody's accelerator. I just want to skip the line, so to speak. I want to skip the training. I don't want to stretch. I don't want to do the weights. Just put me in the game, coach. I want to be a starter. And now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Listen, the startup grind can be really overwhelming. We all know that. And a ton of people in our industry are dealing with burnout. And you know what? Some of them might not even know they're dealing with burnout. But you know the symptoms. You see it. You're on Zoom. Somebody is fatigued. They have a lack of motivation. Maybe they're irritable. Oh, it's the worst, right? And we associate burnout with work. But that's not the only cause. You ever try to raise kids while running a startup? Trust me, it's not easy. I'm sitting here, I'm working so many days, and everything starts to blend. When you're a remote worker, you don't get to see people. Maybe you're not out as much. Well, BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you to prioritize yourself. Talking with someone can help you figure out what's causing stress in your life. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't even need to have your camera on if you don't want to. And BetterHelp is much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. So here's the call to action. It's very simple. Twist listeners can get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/twist. That's betterhelp.com/twist. It's a little unrealistic.
Right. I think unrealistic. We should be generous because it also, we want founders to have magical thinking. We want them to believe so much in their vision. It's like, it's a fine balance. And so I don't want to suggest that they're also entitled, right? It could be a combination of naivete.
Let's be honest. We don't have to coddle. Honestly, I don't think we have to coddle anybody. Most of the VCs I know, super entitled. Majority of founders over the last 5 years, entitled. Yeah. Majority of podcasters over the last 3 years, pretty entitled. Give me a new microphone. I want a new setup. Replace my, look at me.
I'm just hiding my super fancy microphone right now.
Look how entitled I am. I'm like, you know what I want? I want the exact same setup. Go to Tahoe and set me up a second studio.
Drive up here
and make me, I am entitled, right? And hopefully, I earned it, but everybody's been a little entitled. So now this concept of the pre-seed or the seed extension or the pre-series A, those are bridges, the next group. Mm-hmm. So for the first one, it's a magical term that people use for, I don't want to build a prototype. I don't want to do sweat equity. I want to skip like 6 or 12 months of work. Now, the other one, a seed extension or pre-series A, is saying, I'm too proud to say I want a bridge.
Right.
Or I need an extension.
I need a bridge. Because I raised a bunch early and now I have to pivot because my initial thing didn't work out. And so now I'm just kind of like trying to pay for my pivot before I series A on my new business.
Now, there is a way to frame it. So now this one could be 2 or 3 different things. One of them is, most likely it's a bridge. You didn't hit your target. So you raised $3 million in your seed. You were supposed to use that to get to $2 or $3 million in revenue a year, or let's say $1 million in revenue for your SaaS product. And then that would have enabled you to do a $5 to $10 million Series A. And you only got to $300K in revenue. And when you went to get your Series A, you weren't growing. You would have a 5-month growth and then -5 and then 10 and then -2. And nobody wanted to do your Series A. So you need a bridge. You need more time to figure it out. Be honest about it. Like if you're a founder, in my mind, but they came up with this term seed extension or seed plus or pre-series A.
I've even seen seed 2 and seed 3, like in Crunchbase, I've seen seed 2.
Yes. And so it's basically a bridge.
Yeah.
Now, there is an exception, which I have seen, which is I've had founders come to me and say, listen, Jacob, we thought we were going to hit 1. We hit 1.2. And we are in spitting distance of break even. So you know how we said we were going to burn money? We actually made money 2 of the last 6 months because we didn't find developers to do this stuff, and we landed and expanded with this client. And things are going really good. We've been really conservative and it's worked out. So we still have some cash in the bank. We got 9 months of cash. We thought we'd have 3 to 6 right now. We got like 9 to 12. What do you think about maybe putting in $500,000 or $1 million? Our last valuation was 12, but we hit all our targets. We think we're going to go out for a $30 million valuation for Series A. You're interested in putting in $1 million now at $20 million and buying 5% of the company? Well, yeah, I'd be like, yeah. Sorry, Sunday school. That'd be frack, yeah. Sorry, I got to Battlestar Galactica. Frack,
flap, yeah, exactly.
No, frack.
Yep,
like fracking. Frack, yeah. I'd be like, frack, yeah.
Frack, yeah.
And in fact, I've done this opportunistically. I went to a number of companies and said, listen, we read your update. You're up 3.7 times year over year. Now it's a small number, whatever. You were at 300 last year. Now you're at 1.3, but it's still 3.x, You think you might want to, and you have 400K in the bank and you're burning 70. Okay. You got like 6-7 months. I think you'll clear market. You want me to put in $1 million now at this valuation just to give you a little extra breathing room and you take your time and maybe get the number up a little more before you raise the 5 million? That actually would make more sense, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's the conversation that can happen, but you gotta drill down on that.
Also, founders, send your updates.
If you're sending updates,
that's why.
If you haven't been sending updates and then you start sending them now in the recession, that's better than nothing. Because let's say your funding sources dry up. If you haven't been sending updates and you're an investor, your contemporaries have been sending updates. Who as an investor, if you have 20 portfolio companies and 10 have been sending updates, 10 haven't, and of those 10, 6 are doing good, 2 are doing great, 2 are kind of struggling. And you've only got 5 more bets to make, 6 more bets to make on follow-on. You're going to bet, you only have the ability to follow on with 1/3 of your 20. You're going to pick the 7 from that 10 in all likelihood. Or you might pick one of the other 10 and it will be the one that's doing spectacular and claims to not have time to send an update. But you still know the top line revenue number. So yeah, this is the exact moment in time of recession where being honest and writing these updates matters more. So if you've been delinquent in doing that, founder to founder, I would do it now. Do it now.
Yeah.
Now's a good time.
All right, we covered a lot of ground in
sorry that
VC
went a little
Sunday
long,
School.
but I think it was a lot of jumping off points.
It's great. It's so great. It's so awesome.
Well, maybe next week we could do, Molly, just how to come up with the term sheet if there are no competitors, and you've got to come up with a valuation yourself. So maybe you can come up with like maybe 3 scenarios for me. This level of traction, this level of traction, this level of traction. How would you value, pick a SaaS company, pick a marketplace company. And I'll just, start with like what do they call that? A composite of like companies you're meeting with. Yep. It could actually be some climate ones, right? Because some of the climate ones we're looking at, it's like, we have no revenue. We're trying to do this crazy moonshot. Like, how do you
there's a lot. There's science, right? There's hard science. There's commercializing R&D is a category.
It's a category
in climate companies. And
hard one.
It's a really hard one to figure out. And it's very, very, very much in the category of like, but what if it works? A lot of times. So yeah. All right. Well, we got a great This Week in Climate Startups coming up next. So stay with us.
By some estimates, over 90% of startups will go out of business in year 1. That's why Microsoft created the Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub. This program provides founders at any stage with up to 6 figures in resources. Wait until you hear about this ridiculous list of perks. You're going to get up to $150,000 in Azure credits based on your stage and size. You're going to get free access to GitHub's enterprise tier, technical advice from experts at Azure and Microsoft Cloud, one-to-one mentorship from their mentor network, exclusive benefits and discounts from companies like OpenAI, very nice. And the best part is there are no fundraising requirements. So unlike others in the industry, the Microsoft for Startup Founders Hub doesn't require startups to be investor-backed or third-party validated to sign up and access benefits. It's truly open to any founder, like it should be. And it's not about who you know. It's about what you're building. So any founder at any stage can get up to 6 figures of value by signing up at aka.ms/thisweekinstartups. Take a minute to write this down, aka.ms/thisweekinstartups. No spaces, no dashes. Make sure you use that URL so they know you're a fan of the show. Who do you got on This Week in Climate? I really have been enjoying it, Molly. What do you got this week?
I love this kind of thing. Speaking of hard science, so This Week in Climate, we've got Aether Diamonds founder Ryan Shearman, who is, in addition to founding this company, Aether Diamonds, is a climate tech angel investor in seed companies. So Aether pulls carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gas, out of the atmosphere to create lab-grown diamonds. So, diamonds, other lab-grown diamonds are actually produced using petrochemicals, including methane, which is like a terrible greenhouse gas. So, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal because people are wanting more ethically sourced diamonds. They don't want, mining and blood diamonds. So in 2021, lab-grown diamond jewelry sales were like $5.9 billion.
What?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So yeah.
Well, I was just wondering, are these, would a person know the difference between these diamonds if you were to look at them?
And they've gotten really good.
Molecularly, they are diamonds, but a diamond expert could tell an organic, quote unquote, diamond ripped from a mine somewhere.
I think
with children from lab grown diamond. An expert could tell, but a civilian wouldn't.
Yeah, I think that is 100% the case.
Is there a price difference? In other words, like if you were to buy a 2 or 3 carat diamond, you might be in for 20, 30 grand, right? For your wedding, engagement ring, whatever. Would you save money on this or just save the environment?
No, you save money. There's one, let's see, lab-grown diamonds can be as much as 60% cheaper.
Oh, wow.
Than, mined diamonds.
Oh, interesting.
And then, of course, so half off, maybe more, depending. I don't know if the Aether lab-grown diamonds are cheaper.
So I guess then the question is, but socially, will people accept these? If you ask a woman to marry you, are they going to throw this in your face if they find out it's lab grown? You're going to be in trouble.
I mean, I guess it depends on how much, he or she cares about the environment. But I will tell you that the numbers say people are willing to accept them because prior to 2018, lab-grown diamond jewelry sales totaled less than $1 billion.
Okay.
And then a short 3 to 4 years later, we're up to almost $6 billion as an industry. So there's definitely, that's a pretty good, if we were doing a valuation multiple,
sure.
we would say that was pretty good growth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and 50 to 60% cheaper or 40 to 50% cheaper on average than mined diamonds is also pretty hard to argue with.
Yeah. It's like anything that is a business based on scarcity, there'll be less scarcity, so the prices should go down. And then it's just a matter if the diamond lobby, I suppose, can convince people to not buy these.
Yeah.
But this young generation, they want to do what's right for the environment and certainly for human rights. And if you think about just those two factors, human rights and the environment, it's a double win.
Yeah.
So how could you buy a mine diamond?
Right.
If it's already been pulled out of the ground, that's one thing. If it's your grandmother's diamond ring, no problem. Right. But I don't think this next generation is going to want a diamond that was recently ripped out of a mine by some, poor person, or God forbid, a child, in these conflict diamonds. I mean, this is great. This is awesome.
I mean, it's actually like a phenomenal industry. And apparently they are, they're way higher in quality than cubic zirconia or something like that. Like they are diamonds for all intents and purposes, but because they're lab grown, they can also tweak other characteristics. Like they can make them shinier, like have more polish.
Cut. Yeah.
They can be more symmetric.
Like I would think, I wonder if they can make the Asher cut or the Princess cushion cut, whatever these things are.
Totally. They can make any cut. They can actually make more cuts.
Got it.
Because they're fabricated in a lab. So they can have more symmetry. They can it's super interesting.
This is going to be like Blade Runner, where
Aether is Aether's like all of that, but carbon negative.
Yeah, it's great. This is going to be like Blade Runner, where do you like our owl? Deckard, and it's like, so of course it's not real, but we've got an owl that's better than real. It's actually going to flip at a certain point. Like the fact that some group of people are accepting these at half price, I'm waiting for these to become worth more than the organic ones ripped out of the earth, like the actual quote unquote real ones, and they'll be better. Just like I'm waiting for an Impossible Burger that tastes better than a beef burger. That's the flippening that I'm waiting for. But this is another flippening, which is young people are going to really enjoy getting these because they care.
They care.
I think that's the greatest thing in the world is people are young people and some older people who actually care. We saw it with Teslas. We saw it with the Impossible Burger. We saw it with people putting solar on their homes. Yep. People made those three decisions independent. I think the majority of them made those decisions independent of the economics. Yep. They bought an $18 Impossible Burger early on. They bought a $150,000 Tesla. They could have bought cheaper cars, could have bought cheaper burgers. And they put solar installations on that they could never, in the early days, hope to recoup, or, they didn't make economic sense. It would have been cheaper to just keep burning oil or gas or whatever. Mm-hmm. So good on these folks. Can't wait to hear the interview.
That's how markets get made. Enjoy. Mm-hmm. Ryan Shearman, thanks so much for coming on This Week in Climate Startups.
My pleasure.
It's great to meet you. And I just feel like I have to warn the audience that they're going to be doing a ton of shopping by the time we're done with this conversation. Tell us, if you would, give us the high level summary. What do you do at Aether?
Yeah, so it's a rather easy pitch. We take harmful carbon that is warming the planet, pull it from the atmosphere and turn it into beautiful carbon that warms the heart. So diamonds from thin air.
Diamonds from thin air. This is crazy. Now let's dig a little deeper. Tell us how it works. It's because the air part is a big deal, right? Not carbon from the ground.
Correct. Now, whether you're talking about a lab-grown diamond or a mine diamond, all diamonds ultimately source their carbon from the ground. So regular lab-grown diamonds in today's market are made with methane, largely. Some use graphite. Regardless, it's an extractive process when you go fully upstream. That's a big part of the narrative that anyone who tries to tout regular lab-grown diamonds as a more sustainable alternative likes to omit. Ultimately, the carbon is fossil carbon, and we have processes that we can use to turn them into gemstones. We've taken a vastly different approach. We take atmospheric CO2, we put it through a patented process to convert it into an ultra-high purity hydrocarbon, so atmospheric methane, we call it. Essentially what we're producing, our feedstock, is electronics grade ultra-high purity CH4. So everyone else gets that from the ground through fracking, through the crude oil refinement process. We're taking it directly from the air. We're putting it through a Sabatier reaction, essentially reverse combusting the CO2 that's already in the atmosphere, combining that with hydrogen to reassemble CH4 and release O2 into the atmosphere, which is good for you, me, and anyone else who has lungs. Then we take that and we put it into a chemical vapor deposition reactor, and we produce the final gemstone in the same exact manner that anyone else would, using fossil methane, and we do it with atmospheric methane. So at the end of the day, the diamond is 100% made of atmospheric carbon. Every atom of carbon that makes up our diamonds was previously warming the planet.
Which is why you say these diamonds are carbon negative, right? They're actually, It's a positive. Ultimately, it's a net positive.
Yeah. So the manufacturing process is net neutral. and then the carbon that's stored in the diamond, a 1 carat diamond. People say, well, how much carbon is in a 1 carat diamond? 1 carat. So that 1 carat of carbon brings us over the threshold. So it is carbon negative by a minimal degree. But what excites us about this is diamonds are this really interesting product to make from captured carbon. Ultimately, it allows us to generate orders of magnitude more revenue on a per ton basis. So it's an economic force multiplier. We can sell that diamond and then take a portion of the profits from every transaction and utilize that for funding frontier projects in the carbon capture and utilization space. Our net impact as an organization, as a company, will come through a lot of those external initiatives as well as other internal initiatives that relate to carbon sequestration, utilization outside of just diamonds, other solid carbon products.
So this is an answer to the people who would say maybe there's better things you could do with direct air capture technology than create luxury gemstones. You're saying, I am also, as it happens, a climate tech investor, and this is a great business that's great for the planet that allows me to reinvest this money into other, hopefully, net positive projects.
Precisely. I think there's a second side to that coin as well, and it's engagement. And I'm not talking about getting down on one knee. I'm talking about getting people.
Oh, right. I get it. Because diamonds.
Because diamonds. We're talking about, mobilizing society at large. There's something special about diamonds. There's something sexy. There's something there. And it enables us to go out and work with today's tastemakers, celebrities, athletes, influencers, and essentially, in one small way, make participating in the fight against climate change sexy, fun, and cool. Bringing what we're doing and using it as the foundation to make climate a bigger part of the zeitgeist is really important to us. Ultimately, for me, for our company, we are firm believers that solving the climate crisis is not a technological challenge; it's a people challenge. So if we can come in and establish this really exciting, culturally relevant brand, work with really great collaborative partners, top tier luxury brands, and all of the right people to have people talk about this when they're sitting around the table. The first thing you do when you get engaged is you show off that ring, and we want to be a part of that story. And it starts small and you build momentum. And if we can use this as an opportunity to bring people into climate in a way that is low friction, you're not doing anything different. You're just buying from a different brand and having that real great impact. That's something that's special and something that's unique and something that we're very excited about.
Yep. I have roughly 1 million questions, but I want to kind of go through a little bit of the process a little bit more. One thing I did not realize in reading about your company is that direct air capture exists at a big enough scale to harvest enough carbon for you to do this. Like, where is that happening?
Small. So we get all of ours from a partner called Climeworks. So they built their first plant in Hindville,
Switzerland. Small. This is great.
See, this is the beauty. Diamonds,
right.
if you look at the carbon capture and utilization space, how are people making money? Right? You can pull carbon from the air, you can pump it underground and mineralize it, and then you can sell carbon credits. And if you're really lucky, you get $1,000 a ton.
Mm-hmm.
We take that same ton, we turn that, in the broad scheme of things, small amount of carbon into roughly about $5 to $10 million worth of diamonds. So we're not talking about $1,000, $10 million in top line. All of a sudden, that little bit of carbon becomes a catalyst. It becomes a fuel to essentially power this economic engine. And that's what excites us.
Kind of like you're printing money out of carbon.
In a manner of speaking.
Yeah. Amazing. Kind of shocked as you describe it that no one else thought of this. But your experience here, I think, is probably what makes this so successful, right? Previously, you were with David Shearman, one of the original team members on the men's line, where you had already developed new products, is my understanding, right? And product collections that featured materials that weren't necessarily endemic to the jewelry industry.
Precisely. I cut my teeth in jewelry at David Shearman. A wonderful company. Got to work on some really, really exciting projects. It's where I met my current co-founder and several members of our team that we've now brought on. And I was the materials guy. I was the mechanical engineer. I got to, say, hey, if we're going to make carbon fiber jewelry, I actually have experience working with composite materials. I can be the guy who goes to the factory and is talking to the people who are doing the wet layup and understands, at a very fundamental level how that works. That was really crucial for what we did. We did some stuff with meteorite, really, really interesting material, the Gibeon meteorite. It's a metal that comes from an asteroid. It landed in Africa a millennia ago, and If you cut it and etch the surface with acid, it reveals this Wyman-Staton pattern. It looks like a circuit board almost, but it's naturally occurring. Really beautiful material. How do you make a luxury product out of that if it's chock full of, nickel and iron? And if you leave it out on your counter for a couple of days, it's going to rust. You'll get a little surface flash rust that happens. So can we come up with surface coatings? Can we deal with this through, using sacrificial metals and just, the basic galvanic principle to protect that surface from looking like something beautiful one day and looking like something, horrible the next. And that's just an engineering challenge. That's chemistry. So I got to do some really cool stuff there and ended up leaving jewelry. I started a hardware company, did that for 5.5 years. And that was my first real foray into the world of startups and entrepreneurship. We sold that business in 2018. And this was an idea that came out of a, offhand conversation with my now co-founder. I had just finished reading a book called Drawdown, and at the tail end of the book, it talks about, technologies that are coming. And I'd read about this new facility in Switzerland that was being built. End up talking to Dan, my co-founder, about 2 or 3 hours later. And I said, by the way, have you heard of direct air capture? We have a way of chemically removing CO2 from the air. Can you imagine if we could turn that carbon into diamonds? And that was literally the extent of the conversation.
Was that literally it?
That was it. A week later, maybe 5 days later, he calls me up. He says, Ryan, I can't stop thinking about diamonds from air. I said, yeah, neither can I. And I held up a piece of paper that had all of my notes. I'd done like 20 hours of research. And I'm like, I think I know how we can do this. And what we're doing today is not exactly what we cooked up in that first week, but it's remarkably close. 80%, 90% of the way there. We had to add in a couple steps in between just to, to get certain elements, certain processes along the way a little bit more efficient and get rid of some toxins that we weren't aware of early on. But generally, what we're building, what we've built and what we're scaling right now is what we conceived, over the span of a week in 2018.
Wow. How hard was the science?
Very challenging. It turns out our atmosphere is predominantly nitrogen. And you can't have nitrogen in your gas when it's going into the diamond reactor. It essentially arrests the formation of the crystal growth. So you want that crystal lattice to form perfectly. The analogy I've used in the past, imagine trying to nail shingles to a roof of a house in the middle of a hurricane. It's controlled chaos and you're trying to order these carbon atoms and nitrogen will react in that chamber. So you really can't have any nitrogen. So that was a big thing for us is how do we eliminate nitrogen at every step of the way? And this could be even, a fitting that's not tightened to spec, allowing some atmosphere to have ingress. And, we're talking about parts per billion scale here. So we have to be extremely, extremely careful throughout the process to not introduce elemental nitrogen or nitrogen-based compounds. And that underlying technology, that process, that is hard to begin with, but there are certain elements of this that hadn't been done before. So we were really kind of crawling around in the dark trying to find our way. We had one breakthrough that was the result of a mistranslation between an English speaker and a non-English speaker. It was kind of one of those, hey, we spilled something in the lab and we had a breakthrough discovery type of thing.
Really?
Dumb luck. Probably saved us 9 months. We've looked back and
will we understand it if you try to explain it?
I don't know that I understand it even fully.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
the gods were on your side, is what you're saying.
At numerous times throughout this journey, there have been kind of these moments where the universe tipped its hat at us and just said, "Here you go, guys. I'm in your corner." And even the composition of the diamonds. When you pull a diamond up from the ground, we've been studying diamonds for as long as we've known about them, and we know a lot about diamonds from the ground. We know specifically the ratio of two stable isotopes of carbon that exist in nature and what you typically find in a mined diamond. Carbon-12 and carbon-13 have a very well-defined ratio. When you're making lab-grown diamonds from fossil fuels, that ratio is different. So people say, oh, lab-grown diamonds are identical to mined diamonds. Well, yes, they are 100% carbon, but it's not the same isotopic composition. It just so happens that the composition of C12 to C13, that ratio in the air after it goes through our process, falls smack in the middle of the bell curve of where you would typically find the C12 to C13 ratio from a mined diamond. So essentially, we are actually producing something that is identical to mined diamonds, whereas everyone else is getting pretty close.
Wow. Does that matter to people? We did a little research and discovered that the lab-grown diamond market is on fire as it is. But I wonder, what kinds of questions do consumers ask you about these diamonds?
Yeah, for a while, I think the number one leading question when it came to lab-grown diamonds was oh, is this real? You know, in the 70s, we had glass alternative simulants like cubic zirconia that were first developed, and now you've got moissanite. And there's several of these alternatives that are not diamond material. So I think there was an educational gap that had to be crossed, and broadly, we see less people ask that question now. Fewer and fewer people are kind of getting into the fundamentals. They are doing the research online before they're coming to us and engaging with us to learn more. We haven't really yelled far and wide about the difference in the isotopic composition, only because we had IP stuff that was in process, and now that it's all been filed, we can share that a little bit more broadly. But we've yet to start pounding on our chest to tell that message. But at the end of the day, we do think that it will lend well when it comes to customer psychology and buying something that is really more identical.
Right. Talk about the process, because not only are other lab-grown diamonds using fossil fuels and methane, it's energy and water intensive. And it sounds like you have, in addition to using direct air capture, designed a process that's less resource intensive overall.
Yeah. So we actually produce a little bit of water as part of our upfront process, which we then use for later stages in the process. So we ultimately are consuming a remarkably small amount of water. So we have little to no water impact, which is great. We don't want to be just wasting a ton of great potable water and putting that down the drain. I think there are certainly others out there that are using quite a bit more than we are. As it pertains to energy, we have been very diligent about building a power supply chain, that allows us to get as many zero emissions electrons as possible. So right now it's a blend, predominantly wind, solar. There's a little bit of nuclear peppered in. That takes us only so far. Every time I ship a ring, with a beautiful diamond set into it, there's going to be emissions related to that. So anything related to shipping and logistics, we're offsetting through high quality carbon offsets, everything related to sinks. So we're not big on avoidance. Every term we want to bake additionality into what we're doing. We've taken that a step further. We're actually a financial partner with a group called Clearloop, and we are allocating funds for the development of new solar projects in parts of the U.S. that are underserved from a renewables and low emission energy standpoint. So the first project was a solar farm in Appalachia, an area coal country. We got to do that and bring a responsible, more ecologically friendly source of energy to an area of the country that was underserved, and that has absolutely nothing to do with our core business. We're just happy to drive impact, and this is why we're incorporated as a public benefit corporation. We are the first and only diamond company on the planet, diamond producer who's achieved B Corp certification. So we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're trying at all times to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not just to check a box.
Yeah. I noticed on the website, when I may or may not have been shopping for jewelry, that for example, underneath the products you list carbon footprint offset in years or fractions of years. So I was looking at these $40,000 statement earrings, and it said carbon footprint offset 6.7 years. What does that mean? Years of what?
So the average American has a carbon footprint of about 16 metric tons per year. I've done a pretty deep LCA on my own life, and I'm a little higher than that. I'm around 20.
Life cycle assessment, for those who aren't familiar yet.
So I'm a little higher than the average bear, but we said, all right, based on the 16-ton number, we've sold this diamond. This is an amount of profit we can allocate towards all of these, carbon sinks. So working with groups like Charm Industrial, they have a pyrolytic process. They take organic, waste material, and they essentially, instead of burning it, they put it in a vacuum chamber and they turn it into an oily sludge. And then they can put that back underground. So carbon that would otherwise biodegrade on the surface and vent, likely methane, as that process happens. Now that's not going to happen. We're going to capture that underground. It's like an oil that's not combustible. So no one's ever going to want to dig it back up and use it as a fuel source. So this is a really great way of taking, material that would otherwise be contributing to global warming and have it have a reverse impact. So, we are definitely happy with the way we've been able to work with these frontier projects and bring non-dilutive funding. And hopefully as we continue to scale our business, that can scale as well. And when we map that to our jewelry products, we say for every carat of diamond that we sell, our environmental commitment is to remove 20 tons from the atmosphere. So a 1 carat diamond maps to about 1.25 years. So that's the way we've been doing it thus far. We'll see how long we can continue to do that with external projects. Spot price in the market today for a ton of CO2 is tripled in the last year. So Ultimately, there could be constraints where we have to cap it at some reasonable amount, but that probably hits an inflection point as we start building our processes to produce other carbon-based materials. So our underlying core tech and specialty and area we want to focus is taking atmospheric gaseous CO2 and turning it into solid carbon. So that's diamond as a starter. It's graphite for use in batteries. As we move towards a more electrified future, we're going to need a great domestic source of graphite, and we'll be able to do that. And then other carbon morphologies, graphene, carbon nanotubes, things like that.
Interesting. So that's the longer term play, even within Aether, it sounds like, is to develop those materials, not necessarily as an outside frontier investment.
We'll see. Yes. We'll see how far we take it internally. Maybe we evolve into some type of holdco where we've got a jewelry brand and then we've got, other products, technologies, or companies we spin out. So we'll have to see how that kind of unfolds over time. It's too early to say.
Interesting. How it looks, the business model is designing and selling jewelry. Is that right? Like, do you sell to wholesalers or is it all, direct to consumer effectively?
So at the time of taping, we are 2 days ahead of our wholesale launch. So we announced
got you
this
just in time.
Just in time. We announced this, to the world in the fall of 2019 that we were doing this, and then we formally launched in the week between Christmas and New Year's because it was more about catching people when they were home with their families and having a cool story to say, hey, you know what I saw on Reddit today, and that worked really well. So we were able to go and build up a great base of pre-orders from consumers, and everything's been D2C focused thus far. So our bread and butter is custom engagement rings. That's really, we didn't expect it to be that way. We didn't look to position it that way, but
the kids are still doing that, huh?
Yeah, they're still doing it. On average, you'll get between 1.9 and 2.2 million marriages in the US every year. There was a slowdown during COVID, but that was a slowdown in the weddings. It wasn't a slowdown in proposals. Proposals spiked. So broadly speaking, for bridal jewelry, for jewelry as an entire industry, and lab grown as a subset of that, the last couple of years have been really exciting.
I guess it was like you either broke up or you were like, we're in.
It was an accelerant for sure. Yeah.
Seriously. There are, other materials in, of course, the jewelry that you're designing, like gold. And I noticed that those have a lower year score, but they say they're fair mined. How are you sourcing those metals?
So fair mined gold is emphatically the most responsible source for gold on planet Earth today. And I say that confidently because when we talk about other alternatives that are positioned
what does that mean? Fair Mine?
So the Fair Mine organization,
is that a brand or it's an organization?
Got it. So think Fair Trade Coffee. Fair Mine Gold, it comes from select or generally more artisanal gold mining operations, but they're, a lot of this happens in South America and other parts of the world. And the Fair Mine organization comes in and establishes childcare opportunities for, oftentimes it's not like, one of the parents in a family goes off to work. Both the mother and father, both parental figures are working in this mining operation. What's going to happen to their children during the day? Well, we've got childcare opportunities, educational opportunities, plans to graduate some of their laborers into other more specialized roles. They do all of these things to build a better quality of life, to impact the environmental footprint of those mining operations. So they'll say, as part of this, you can't engage in harmful extraction methods. There are a lot of ways we can pull gold out of the ground. It's not just digging up nuggets and sifting in rivers. It's a lot more complex. There's a lot of chemistry that's utilized, but a lot of that is really harmful. So they come in and they ban those practices. So at the end of the day, you're paying a markup for that gold, and we're happy. We are absolutely happy to pay that markup, knowing that our source of gold is beyond reproach. Other companies like to lean on recycled gold as a really great thing that they can talk about. But if you understand the process by which we recycle gold, it's not environmentally friendly. So for us, to say, hey, this comes from electronic waste, what happens to, all of the really harsh chemicals that are used as part of that extraction process, and how are they disposed of? And generally speaking, we're not so confident that there's a better path. Fair mined, we can rest easy knowing that it's been sourced responsibly. And even our plain gold styles on the website, there's nothing that would just be gold. Every one of them, and the reason you'll still see a small amount of offsetting associated with those products is because every piece has at least one Aether diamond in it. So we'll tuck one away, we'll put it on the inside of a ring, It's our little nod to the consumer. So even our quote unquote plain gold styles aren't actually just gold.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of paying more, I mean, we should be clear that lab grown diamonds can be 40 to 50% cheaper than mined diamonds. Where does your pricing fall? It certainly is luxury. There's no doubt about it.
As of right now, we're priced in the market just about on par, slightly under the cost of a mined diamond. So depending on what we're talking about here, it can range. It's not that we are completely pegged to it. Pricing in the diamond industry is generally compared to what's called the RapNet index. So when you're in the industry, you trade in terms of percent back or the percent off RAP, which is kind of the industry-wide MSRP, right? So RapNet or Rappaport, this organization goes around and they talk to jewelers, they talk to jewelry brands and different companies in the trade and find out what they're selling things for on a given weekly basis, and then publish a new report. This is the kind of going rate this week for a D-color VVS diamond. And the diamonds that we're bringing to market are extremely high quality. I would say they're better than the vast majority of what's available in the regular lab grown side of things. So between that and the complex process that enables us to do what we do and the added impact that the consumer gets with our products that they don't get elsewhere, that all kind of drives to seeing that price where it's at.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you're talking engagement rings, not to be cliche, but I'm sure that people are like, I did not want the cheap knockoff. Like, I want the perfectly, equivalent luxury item that's also better in every other way.
Yeah.
Is there stuff that you can do, and I use the term stuff very scientifically, with these diamonds that you couldn't do with a mined diamond? Like, can you cut them with less waste? Do they have any special properties?
So diamonds from the ground are imperfect. Diamonds from a lab are less imperfect. I talked about that storm and hammering shingles to the roof. Essentially, the conditions are still somewhat consistent inside the reactor. So there are less soft spots in the crystal matrix. So it's a more consistently hard material throughout. Depending on how it's made and how many post-treatment that it goes through, it may or may not have certain internal stresses that could be the same or could differ. So it ultimately depends on whoever's making it, what they choose to do with the stone, how they choose to treat it. In the mine side of the business, post-treatment is looked down on. Stones that are post-treated, you can put a diamond through an annealing process. So you heat it up and cool it down slowly. Essentially, what that does is help kind of reorder some of the imperfections in the crystal lattice, and that might improve its color. So you take a diamond that's a lower color and you can improve that. When it comes to lab grown, we don't think that negative needs to apply necessarily. Everything happens in a lab anyway. What is one additional process? Why should that be? That's my personal opinion. We don't have a stance as a company. Most of our stones go untreated. It's only on the off chance we have a batch that comes in. We're like, it'd be great if that was a little bit nicer in color. And sometimes we will do some post treating. But that's really, one of the only major differences from a material standpoint. At the end of the day, what we're producing is, as I said before, identical to the material that naturally occurs in the ground. The process, that a diamond is made under the ground can take a very long time, billions of years, right? So diamond production from the ground is going away. We hit peak diamond in 2017. So every year from 2017 forward, fewer diamonds are going to come out of the ground. It's crazy. What blew my mind when I first learned this a couple of years ago, when you open a new diamond mine, you've done your geological surveys. You know how big the kimberlite deposit is. Kimberlite is the igneous rock formation that diamonds are found within. And they came up old volcanic chutes, essentially. So they're cylindrical deposits that go straight down. And it's only economically viable to pull that material out at such a depth. Eventually, those mines close. When you open your mine, you know when it's going to close. Yeah. And we have not seen a large-scale industrial diamond mining operation open up since like the late 90s. So by 2040, 18 years from now, 50% of the production of mined diamonds is going to disappear.
Wow.
So globally, half the supply is going to disappear in the next 2 decades.
Wow.
We're only going to be able to backfill and meet demand with man-made diamonds. So our goal is to get out there and commercialize the best man-made diamonds on the planet.
By the way, those listening should not take this as like a incentive to go hoard mined diamonds necessarily, because I'm sure someone is out there listening like, really? I'm going to buy a bunch, which is not the goal of this conversation necessarily. Talk to me about the investing side. Like, do you have are you investing yourself as an angel? Do you have a fund? Is it attached to the company? How does this all come together?
Yeah. So when we talk about non-dilutive capital, this is us acting as a customer, essentially.
Okay.
Right.
So you're a buyer.
Yeah. I mean, we do have aspirations for eventually, if this business can generate the type of liquidity we at this point almost know it can. We'd love to be able to get into that. We'd love to be fairly acquisitive as well, and we'll see, kind of where that takes us. I am personally a climate angel investor, but that hasn't really.
Are you in my syndicate? Haven't mixed yet.
I'm not in your syndicate. I'm in several syndicates, but I'll have to check yours out.
It's new. It just launched.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I interrupted you. So at this point,
yeah, those worlds are two. They're two things.
They're pretty far apart. Yeah,
totally separate. Who knows where things will go someday? We have kind of wonderful purview as to things that are coming down the pike in climate. I think what we're doing it's cool. I'm biased, right? I'm going to say it, but I think what we're doing is cool. So people reach out to us quite a bit, and we hear about stuff when it's really early. And that kind of visibility has been great. And I think hopefully someday it's something we could use as an advantage. Just having great deal flow. But we're way, 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 way down the road from that.
It's cool as hell. I think I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to punch that up a little bit. Do you imagine a time? I'm a big sci-fi fan, and actually, one of the things that got me thinking a lot about climate and adaptation and resilience was this kind of offhanded reference in a Kim Stanley Robinson book to diamond coating around the bottom of buildings when New York was totally submerged to keep it out. And I wonder, do you imagine a world in which this process or something like it could be used to create other materials? Could you upend some sort of manufacturing? I know it's maybe not your goal right now because jewelry, but
yeah, so for us, at least for our trajectory, gemstones for jewelry, that's our business today, right? There are many, 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 and a growing number of industrial applications, high and low tech. Any quantum computing researcher worth his salt is utilizing man-made diamonds as part of that. It's used for advanced medical research and procedures, and diamond blades, not even diamond tip blades. I'm just talking about diamond blades, engineered blades that are 100% made of diamond. We can get really, really thin, and they're super sharp. So it's better than metal. It won't dull over time. So there are a wide range of applications. And then obviously just, from an abrasive standpoint, diamond is the hardest material on the planet. So it's a great cutting and polishing agent, or medium, I should say. So that's where we're going to focus. The challenge in going really, really big is a power challenge. So when it comes to chemical vapor deposition, the process by which you can deposit these carbon atoms on top of one another, you need a ball of plasma. And every time you want to double the diameter of that ball of plasma, you're squaring the amount of power consumption that's required. So you want to go from 50 millimeters to 100 millimeters, whatever your power consumption was, multiply it by itself. So now if you wanted to do something as big as like an iPhone screen, all of a sudden your power consumption is now through the roof. That does not yet make sense, depending on where we go in terms of, further electrification. We'll see. I've heard some really interesting things about, where we are with fusion and what that'll look like from a both kind of research level demonstration versus, full commercial scale. And I think we'll probably have it before those diamond mines all run out. So who knows where we'll get.
Yeah. And then finally, what got you into this, the climate aspect specifically?
Oh, that easy answer. 2017, we had several hurricanes that hit the Gulf Coast and the Caribbean and South American Southeast. And for the first time, climate wasn't this esoteric concept. It was, hey, my neighbor in college, his family's house collapsed and the roof, collapsed on his grandmother. She lost her life. Or the restaurateur who, was a family friend of my father's who I'd, been visiting his restaurant for 20 years. It was completely taken off its foundation. Or my friend who moved all his worldly possessions to his family's home in Texas and stored it all in their garage, including his new motorcycle. And all of a sudden that was underwater. And this happened in quick succession. I was running my last company and I said, what can we do to, help out? JJ Watt from the Houston Texans was raising, this capital to, go towards disaster relief. I had a high school classmate of mine who was on the Texans with JJ. And I reached out and said, hey, we've got an idea. We want to put together kind of a distributed motorcycle ride for charity. And that's really what it was. And we raised thousands of dollars for disaster relief. And at the end of the night of this event, we did an awards ceremony and I was standing up on a table, with a mic and did my spiel. And as I was walking off, we had just kind of shared with the group how much money we had saved. It was so poignant. It wasn't a moment I was going to forget. It was like, after that company sold, I did a postmortem on like the best things that happened in the entirety of my 5.5-year adventure with that company. And that's kind of the one or two on the list. You know, we had a customer write us a letter saying our product saved his life. I think that probably takes the cake. But I felt so fulfilled. I've kind of been chasing that high ever since. So when the company sold, I said, I need to get into the world of impact. Like, it's just unabashed capitalism is a great thing, but free market capitalism probably doesn't exist. And if I'm going to have my way, my legacy is not going to be how many zeros I have in my bank account. It's going to be the impact that I can help kind of bring forth in this world. And I wasn't sure what that was going to take, what form. I just knew I wanted to do climate, generally speaking. So I had some time to kind of look at the problem. And like I said, I was out there kind of casually looking for a project I could get behind. And then that one random conversation with Dan, and we came up with the idea. And I just once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down.
Amazing. Brian Shearman is founder and CEO of Aether Diamonds at etherdiamonds.com, spelled with AE. Go look. Go look, everybody. Just go plow your savings. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Brian, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is just tremendous. Every disaster is an opportunity for hope. There's no doubt about it.